today I wanted to focus on a couple things that have been coming into my universe. And one of the things that I commonly get questions about is, obviously it's going to be training and nutrition hit me up pretty frequently. And twigs on those two trees, I get a lot of addiction questions. But circling back to the training and the nutrition stuff. The training is going to be a lot of different protocol questions, higher frequency versus higher volume, how many times a week to train, how long to rest, all that kind of stuff. The nutrition stuff, by and large, has shifted to how can I toggle between fill-in-the-blank trendy diet? Keto, carnivore, plant-based, Whole30, whatever. Biodynamic. Is that still a thing? Gluten-free. And as I will constantly hammer home, no, there's no real right or wrong answer. Not only with nutrition, but with all this shit in life, I'm not an expert in pretty much everything. I have like a really narrow 0.01% thing, little margin of stuff that I can say that I have some level of expertise in. But it's so small, and the same goes for most people on Earth. But the one thing that I can say with some level of certainty is that the older I get, and seemingly the smarter I get, and the more wise and noble I become, I realize that there's so few things where there is a clear right and wrong answer. Context does matter. Situational aspects always come into play. There are circumstances that affect everything. And that is so true when it comes to eating. Less true with training, but still true. With eating, you have to really take into consideration that, after, and look, there's MDs, and I have MD friends, legitimate doctors, and, he or she has graduated from medical school and then been practicing in the field for long periods of time, and they will agree with me that there's still a dramatic lack of knowledge. There's a naivete when it comes to human metabolism. And that when it comes to human metabolism, we're talking about millions of chemical reactions and processes that happen every single time you put any morsel of food in your mouth, and that those chemical reactions are going to be dramatically different from person to person. Okay, so when you see the guy or gal on Instagram or on TikTok telling you that if you're not eating plant-based, if you're not eating low carb, if you're not doing full keto, you're doing it wrong, they're fucked up. And that sounds like the most boneheaded argument to just say, well, they're fucked up. What I mean by that is that anyone who sits there in from any genre, from any facet of the health, fitness, nutrition industry, and says this is the way to go, no ifs, ands, or buts, no questions asked, not open for debate, here it is. They're full of shit. Because even with two identical twins, if one of them was running track in the 100 and 200 meter, and the other identical twin was really into art and didn't do any physical activity, the the ideal, optimal way for them to eat would be different. And the majority of people who are existing, and certainly the majority of people listening or watching this podcast, are not identical twins. We have dramatic evolutionary reasons, cultural reasons, biological reasons why we tolerate different levels of carb intake. Our glucose disposal is totally different. Our protein synthesis is totally different. Digestion rates, digestion ability of different food sources. Just from here's a boneheaded kind of bro science example. How do different cultures around the world deal with dairy? An overwhelming amount of Asians are lactose intolerant. And I don't know necessarily about the Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka Asians, but certainly Korean, Japanese, Chinese, that part of the world, it's a crazy amount of people who can't really tolerate dairy at all. Shift on over to Scandinavia, and it's not a problem for practically anyone. One of the I saw a documentary about evolutionary science, and it was made by really smart scientists, but geared towards people like me who don't understand shit. But one of the more fascinating things, and I'll never forget this. This was 10 years ago. I watched this, and I was so blown away by this. But if you measure the soleus, the front part of your calf, the muscle that runs along your shin, in Middle Eastern and Mediterranean parts of the world, a few Mediterranean parts of the world, places like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, okay? People born there today have jacked soleus muscles, the front of their calf, just fucking jacked. Why? Because of thousands of years of walking in sand. Their ancestors have walked in sand, and so they've genetically found a way to adapt to that. And what is that adaptation? It's giant jacked soleus muscles. So I was like, wow, really blew me away. And I've told this story far too many times probably, but one thing that I have learned is that for those of you that are going to roll your eyes when I get 10 words into this story, there's way more people who probably haven't heard it. So I was training for my first bodybuilding contest this has got to be 2004, something like that. And my training partner at the time was another guy named Mike. His name was Mike Salcido. And he was way more genetically gifted than I was. He was shorter than me by about an inch, but not much. And we weighed about the same. But he was so lean and he was a really well put together guy. And he trained hard. And we decided collectively, hey, let's do this bodybuilding contest, right? So we reached out to our friend who worked out at Gold's Gym in Pasadena with us. His name was Alessandro Comadina. And he's a certified IFBB pro bodybuilder. He's older now, but he was, and competed against the greats in the 90s. And he's also a wizard with nutrition. We asked him to help us with our diet. Okay, so we're both about 180 pounds at the time, give or take 4 or 5 pounds, and we're both I'm 5'10", he was 5'9". Going into the contest, I was eating practically zero carbs. I started off cycling through, and I was eating a good amount, but never high, what would be considered a healthy amount of carbohydrates. And that's just because that's the way I function. Going into the show, Mike Salcido, practically same body weight, was eating 300 grams of carbs. And that it just goes to show you, same size, training the same way, same age and everything, but it's just he was different. And I wanted to give this kind of long-winded intro to discuss the idea of nutrition as a whole, but also meal prepping. Because meal prepping is going to be a whole different ballgame from person to person. The single mom with 3 kids that also has 2 jobs away from the house, her capability of meal prep is not going to be the same as someone who works from home, or a personal trainer who works at a gym that's 200 yards away from their house. I think you get what I'm saying. But it also is a highly, highly, highly important, integral part of sustainable, not only physique transformation and physique maintenance, but just health. The sooner you fall into the trap of just like, oh my God, I'm hungry, where is food? That's the moment you start to let your sustainability in your diet fall apart. And I know everyone nowadays is so busy, and convenience food has gotten so good and so readily available that people talk about, oh, it's the processing, it's the high fructose corn syrup. No, it's not. It's not. The reality is that name a decade, from the 20th century, in Vinnie Tortorich's new documentary, which I highly recommend, Beyond Impossible, he was comparing Woodstock 99 versus Woodstock 69. I said 69. And he was showing that most people at Woodstock 69 were not only healthy, but they were like kind of shredded. All these hippies with their shirts off, and it was just people. It wasn't like it was a bodybuilding documentary. It was a concert documentary, and you see this footage. You would have to work really hard to find an overweight person. And that Woodstock 99, quite the opposite. It was all these Limp Bizkit fans with their shirts off and man tits, right? And girls with like really bad tattoos and fupas. And sure, I'm sure food additives, processing, soy, whatnot, it plays somewhat of a scientific role. But the overall big difference is that in 1969, you didn't have real access to lots of convenience food. And the convenience food that you had access to was shit. You know what a convenience store and a vending machine was like? You watch Mad Men, and there's lots of kind of objective evidence to show how hard Mad Men worked to really nail every single detail of being in, the early 60s to 1970. Excuse me. It's just when you ate food at a restaurant or something that was prepared for you by people with understanding of prepping a meal. Did I just completely change the angle of my... It's better. And there wasn't a tremendous amount of access to convenience food. And by the way, convenience food in 2022 is excellent and tasty. It's really yummy. Like I don't think anyone is surprised to hear that like bags of chips or pastries is like not healthy. But you're fucking lying. I don't care what kind of shredded, holistic idiot you are. You're lying if you don't say hot Cheetos and fucking Mountain Dew's delicious. And fast food restaurants have gotten to be snipers at making it really readily available, affordable, and convenient to kind of get through the day because we're all kind of pressed when it comes to time. So that being said, you have to understand that, making the right food choices is important. Training is important. But having the infrastructure of meal prepping is like the biggest part. And I've told you guys, I'm not saying I'm the paragon of perfect physiques or health, but I'm pretty damn good, especially for a dude my age who's not on the gas. I'm not using any performance enhancing drugs, I look and feel pretty darn good. And the main difference is like I don't train like particularly like an animal. It's not like legendary how hard I train. It's certainly not the strictest diet. What it is that there's never a time ever when I'm anywhere, whether it be at home, working, out with the family, where I'm stuck going, oh, what am I going to eat? I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to get hungry and I don't have food available. That's always taken care of in my mind. Whether it be bringing something with me or knowing where I'm going and what time I can get away and what, restaurants around me are going to provide me with the ability to get something that I know is going to be good for me. Okay? Like it just doesn't happen. Whether it be a road trip with my family or I'm going to be on set somewhere for hours. And that is like such a massive factor. So I wanted to really dissect meal prep and what it means and then how to get it so that it can work for you, regardless of what situation you're in, right? And then there was also some odds and ends on the Patreon Q&A that I didn't get a chance to get. The people sent in their questions after I had already posted the episode. So I wanted to hit on those too. And in fact, one of them was about meal prep. So I want to start off with that. And it was from Jenny Lee. Jenny Lee. And I do that in my head every time I see something from Jenny Lee. And you may be asking, well, why do you do that, Mike? Well, it's because there used to be a animated show based on Mr. T. And the theme song was Mr. T. Mr. T. So for no reason whatsoever, every time I read an email from Jenny Lee or I see her name, I see Jenny Lee. It's for you. Mikey, I would love to hear about one of your go-to recipes for cooking steak, preferably not on the grill. Good question, because I have come to realize that not everybody grew up in a world where like cooking red meat was just part and parcel for being alive. That a lot of people, probably because of like propaganda in the 80s and 90s, try very hard to stay away from red meat. So they never thought it was important to understand how to cook red meat, but it is. And you should be eating red meat. And so, you may be looking at this steak going, oh, what the fuck do I do? How do I not screw this up? I do prefer to grill, but I also pan fry a lot. So when I do, here are some tips that I will give you. The higher the fat content, the longer you want to cook it. And here's why. Really fatty meat, like ribeye, for instance, is going to take a while to kind of cook through. That's the thing with steak and with ground beef, is that you're going to cook the outside pretty quickly regardless. So you want to make sure you kind of gauge, what can I do to not make the outside scar tissue and then the inside's uncooked. So things like ribeye and fattier cuts of meat, things like ribeye and fattier cuts of meat, you want to cook slow and low. I like to take a low to medium pan, put a little bit of butter or beef tallow in there. When it's turned to liquid, I put the steak on about 4 to 5 minutes on each side. During that time, I've already set my oven to broil, the highest setting, right? And I will take that steak off the grill, off the stove top, and then put it right there in my cast iron pan, right into the oven for about 20 minutes, depending on how you like your steak. I like my steak rare, very rare. My family likes it medium rare, so I sometimes will cook it a little more, but 15, 20 minutes, however you like. Now, for leaner cuts of meat, not only do you want to just kind of go at it with higher temps, but you want to be able to get it to a position where you can get to that middle, even though you're kind of singeing the outside. So with flank steak, strip, filet, stuff like that, where it's leaner red meat, I will sometimes cut it up. Not so much filet, but flank steak, flat meat, and New York strip. I'll cut it up into strips, carne asada style or fajita style, and that way you can really get the pan hot, and then I can cook it, and it will be cooked evenly, even with the hot temperature of the cast iron pan. Another great thing about slicing up meat like that, if you get a flank steak or strip, whatever, is that then you can mix easily well cooked, well tolerated, well digested vegetables in with it and cook it at the same time. So you have kind of a full meal right there. You can also do potatoes if that's a part of your diet. I will things like carrots, potatoes, things like that, you want to put on before the meat because they take a lot longer to cook than the meat itself. Things like mushrooms and really thinly sliced or small piece sliced zucchini, you want to maybe put on either at the same time or after the meat because those cook so quickly. So those are things you want to take into consideration. And then you have like I make this food that I call food of my people because I got it from this Russian cookbook, and it's essentially cooked carrots, potatoes, and meat. Excuse me, I used actually chicken thigh, cut up in a little piece, all three cut up into pieces, and then you put it in one pot, and it comes out, really. And I do, like a lot of like traditional Eastern Bloc seasonings. I followed this recipe, right? So the first time I made it, my wife, who her father was a Czechoslovakian immigrant, clearly he influenced her eating very much. She ate it and she loved it, and she goes, I feel like this is the food of my people. So my daughter and I, forever, we just call this recipe the food of my people. Anyway, when I cook the potatoes, I'm cooking potatoes, carrots, and chicken thigh in the same boneless, skinless chicken thigh in the same pan. I put in the potatoes like a good 10 minutes before I put in the chicken, and then I put in the carrots another like 5 minutes after the potatoes. Then 5 minutes later, I'll put in the chicken because, things take a lot longer to cook. Certain things cook really quickly, certain things don't. So always taking that into consideration. And like with a lot of things in life, like I've told all you people with training, you could read all the manuals you want. You don't know, and you just got to do it. And maybe you'll fuck something up. But just, you got to practice, and then you just get good at it. So that's one piece of advice. With meal prep, I want to say overall, you should definitely look to curate recipes that can fit your lifestyle. What I mean by that is find things that you can take with you to the office if you're going to the office, and then reheat if you have access to a microwave or whatnot. If you don't have that, find things that are going to keep without the need for refrigeration and then needing reheating. Do I think that protein shakes is something that should be a staple of people's diets? No, but if it's preventing you from getting vending machine food or fast food, yes. Okay, if you work in a situation where you don't have access to refrigeration, you don't have access to reheating ability, then look, get yourself a protein shake that you like drinking that's got good ingredients. Grab an apple and call it a day. Set some almonds aside, and then make sure when you're not at work, before and after, you're getting that home cooked whole food meal, because I do think that actual natural full foods, as opposed to things that are isolated, it's a better choice. It's going to keep you fuller, and it's going to provide a fuller spectrum of micronutrients. But that's not to say that you shouldn't ever use a protein shake for what it is designed for, to supplement your actual diet. And it can be a lifesaver. I'm not a guy who goes to it, but there was a time and a place where I was doing 2 different radio shows at 2 completely different times a night. And one of them was 6 hours, 7 hours where I was in the studio. And even though I did have access to refrigeration and reheating ability, there was only, commercial breaks could only be like 2 minutes. So, one of my meals was always just a protein shake and an apple, or a protein shake and like a handful of almonds, So, understand, like, gear your prepping to how you live your life. If you have the ability to reheat and refrigerate, take advantage of that. And, if you're a physique competitor, things are different, but most of us are not. Don't trick yourself into believing that you have to eat shit that sucks because you're trying to change your diet. You don't need to have bland chicken breast and broccoli and tilapia and all that stuff. You don't. Lean ground beef, lean ground turkey and chicken breast and stuff like that can be delicious, and you can add a little cheese. I'm not saying go ham on it, but you can add a little cheese for flavor and find, again, reheatable, easily digested veggies you may be able to mix with it, and boom, Bob's your uncle, as they say in good old Australia. Ground meats tend to be better than like full pieces of meat only for the reason that it doesn't deteriorate the flavor as much if you reheat it. That I'm not saying don't do steak or chicken breast or whatnot, or chicken thigh. What I am saying is that it just, for convenience sake and for ease of use and compatibility with travel and reheating, ground meats tend to work better. Also, there's some science to show that ground meats are digested easily, and it makes a lot of sense because they're already ground up. There doesn't need to be much of a digestion process. So take advantage of that. That's another thing that I wanted to point out, is that, look, I encourage eating red meat. I encourage eating bison and red meats and steak and whatnot. But that's not realistic for most people and most people's budgets. But bulk ground meat, it sure the fuck is. Okay? So just have the wherewithal to find where you can take advantage of the nutritional aspects of red meat without destroying your finances. And another great aspect of red meat and animal protein in general is that it freezes. Anyone out there who hunts knows that you take down an elk, you take down a wild boar, you're getting hundreds of pounds of meat. You're not exactly going to be able to eat all that in the time that it keeps. You have a deep freeze. I have a deep freeze out in my well house. You have I have a giant freezer specifically for meat, both for my dog food and for my family food. It's just chock full of meat, and there ain't nothing wrong with frozen meat, because you realize, okay, I'm running out here in the house refrigerator. You take it out of the freezer and you put it in the fridge, and it's fine. So buying in bulk is a huge, huge, huge gift when it comes to getting quality meat without having to spend an arm and a leg. You save so much money by buying direct from farmers as opposed to the middlemen of supermarkets and certainly of places like a Whole Foods, You can get really good quality meat, and this is even for you guys in urban settings. Go online. There's a lot. Everywhere has local farmers that sell direct, and they'll mail it to you. And you're like, well, I don't want to spend $500 right now, but you're spending $500 to save $300. It is that much of a difference when you're buying direct and cutting out the middleman, just like anything in life, right? With these mattress companies that like to promote on podcasts, or these watch companies that you don't go to the mall and buy this watch. You don't go to the Sit and Sleep or where, the mattress place and buy this mattress. You're getting it direct from the company itself. The price change is dramatic because there's no trucking and no shipping and packaging, and then the markup for the middleman to then make a profit. So I highly encourage you to look into that. Vegetables, it's tougher, right? I know that there is services that do like curated vegetables to your door. I don't like that. And again, this may be a personal thing, but fruits and veggies go to bad so quickly. And then if you end up getting sent a good share of stuff that you don't like that much, it's like a collection of different vegetables, and you're like, well, I hate fucking onions. And you got 13 onions. You're like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? So vegetables and fruits, I do recommend. It's like something else that you need to kind of just do on your own. But they're cheap. Even the organic shit is, people shouldn't complain about produce if you really take the time to think about how much you'll spend going to a different fast food place every day. Truly, look at the comparison. The meat, I get it. I have constantly tried to give people tips for meats because, the difference is pretty dramatic. The amount of calories you can get from meat at a fast food joint in comparison to buying your own and cooking it, it's a considerable difference with price. But please heed my advice and look into getting direct from farming delivery, because you can buy in bulk and you can freeze it and you can save a lot of money and you're getting good meat. Okay. Now, I don't think that people should be tracking and weighing their food forever. It's not something you should be doing forever. But at some point, you need to do it. You need to understand exactly how much you're eating, because almost all of us will be shocked to realize exactly how much we're eating. So that being said, if you're in the position where you're weighing your food and you're tracking and you're measuring everything, it makes it really hard if you have a family, because you're cooking your meal for you and you're trying to measure this, but you got your boyfriend or your wife or your kids or all of them. If you have your boyfriend and your wife at the same dinner, that's impressive. But you get what I'm saying. You have other mouths to feed. And even if they are going to agree to eat the same shit you're eating, it makes it, why am I so gassy? Even if you are, with a collection of people who are going to agree to eat the same thing you're eating, having to cook a whole separate one for yourself because you've weighed that out is a pisser. So here's some tips to be able to have the best of both worlds. Measuring in total, okay? Let's say you're making chicken and rice, okay? If you're making a pound of chicken and a cup of rice, first measure the amount of macros and calories in both, in total, the amount in a cup, the amount in a pound, okay? Measure that. Then cook it. When it's ready to be served, divide it up into equal parts. And you will be able to do the math of what is the macros and the calories of your portion. Okay? So a cup of rice, let's say it's 100 carbs and 400 calories, right? And a pound of chicken is 1,000 calories and it's 0 carbs. You got it. Then you're done cooking. Find a piece of Tupperware or a bowl or something that you will use to measure out all of the, so it's equal measurement. You're using the same bowl. And then break it up into fourths. If you were to break it up into fourths and you know that it's 1,400 calories. Oh, fuck. Why did I do this to myself? You break it up into fourths, you know it's 1,600 calories. Then each serving is 400 calories. And it's a fourth the amount of total protein, a fourth the amount of total fat, a fourth the amount of total. And you can, that makes it very easy. I do that with my family all the time because I am a stupid meathead and I weigh considerably more than my daughter, who's 8, and I weigh a pretty good amount more than my wife. I will sometimes, with certain recipes, cut it in half and give. I'll cut it in half, right? I've measured everything in total. I take half and I put it aside. I take half and I eat it. The other half that I put aside, I'll cut that in half and give half to my daughter and half to my wife. So you could get creative, but just know that just because you're trying to find the measurements of what specifically what you're eating doesn't limit you to cooking in bulk. And that will go a long way. Now, if you are married to someone or in a relationship with someone, or you have kids, which is really common, especially if the kids are young, and you're trying to eat ground buffalo and broccoli, you're probably not cooking the same shit for your 7-year-old, because he or she's gonna look at it and be like, what the fuck? So that is when you got to bite the bullet and eat something different than your family. Okay? That is a pain in the ass, but alternatively, there should be some push for your children to start to adopt better eating habits. Most of you out there, and I'm not like some, complete prude that's like, you shouldn't smoke. Most smokers who are, they know you shouldn't smoke. This is a fucking America. You're grown up. Smoke if you want. But most people know you shouldn't smoke. And I would venture to say everyone would say they don't want their kids smoking, right? So if you're making this really conscious effort to stay away from cigarettes, why the fuck on earth would you then allow your kids to do it? And the same thing, if you're bending over backwards to try to stay away from foods that you know are not good for you, most of us, especially people listening and watching this podcast, are not going to have Kraft macaroni and cheese, even though it's delicious. It's fucking delicious. And I'm not saying don't ever have it ever, but you get my point. It's not a daily go-to. So why the fuck would you give it to your kids? Are they less important? No. I understand. Look, their metabolisms are through the roof and they can get away with it, and their movement is a lot higher than most people. But by and large, my daughter eats cake. My daughter eats fucking mac and cheese. But it's few and far between, because and my wife have made an effort to kind of encourage her to understand, like, this food that is healthy that we're trying to eat, it's actually pretty good. And you start to get tips and tricks, and you start to play with it a little bit, to the point that you can find these recipes that are good, but also fit your nutritional needs. And it circles back to, like, you just got to do the work. You just got to put in the effort. And I know it sucks, but that's truly the reason why most people don't look the way or feel the way they want to, is because it does take focus. It doesn't take as much focus and effort as most people think, but there is a concerted kind of focus, and there has to be a committed amount of time in your life put to cooking this food, packaging this food, and thinking about how you're going to come up with the foods that you like, that you're also fit your life and your taste buds. Don't fucking, like, I remember Tom Ford, the fashion designer. Okay, I respect him very much. He's fucking awesome. Okay, I have a Tom Ford suit, but I'm not exactly like in a financial situation where I'm going to go buy, and nor am I that type of guy. Like, I'm not that fancy schmancy. But I respect him greatly as a person, because he's always really marched to the beat of his own drum, and he's a guy, like, think about how crazy it is that he became this icon in fashion, and he just decided, he's like, I really want to direct movies, and just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm rich, so fuck you, and fuck the. He was like, it's a really hard job. I'm really setting myself up for embarrassment, because I'm really well known and respected in one field, and I'm taking on a new one. It takes huge guts. Anyway. So Tom Ford, I heard him talking one time in an interview about how he said, you got to work to cultivate your own style, and you want to wear things that make you feel good, but don't ever wear anything just because you think it looks good. If it's uncomfortable, destroys the whole purpose. You have to find things that not only make you feel emotionally comfortable, but physically you have to be comfortable, because if you're not one or the other, both of them are going to go out the door eventually. And the same thing goes with eating. Yeah, you want to find things that are nutritionally rewarding for you and help you meet your goals. But fuck that if it can't also be tasty to you. Okay? Don't confuse the idea of a diet or any type of adherence to an eating plan and think that I now have to exclusively eat things that are poopy. You don't. You don't. There may be some trial and error, and there may be some discomfort in the beginning when you're switching. If you're eating fast food every day, all day, things that are incredibly highly palatable, it's going to be tough. But once the transition happens, you don't have to force feed yourself things you don't like. Find your comfort emotionally and physically. So also here's another thing. Take into consideration kind of like the environmental aspect of your food prep. Especially in my bodybuilding days, don't completely ignore those around you. What do I mean by this? If you're prepping your food and you have fish or broccoli, don't fucking take that to work. Tuna fish. And broccoli's a big one because, all these bodybuilders are all into it. And they steam broccoli and then they go to work and they put it in a microwave. And it's like, dude, you're a dick. Save the broccoli for home. You'll be fine switching to asparagus or zucchini for that meal. Don't bring fish and broccoli and super stinky shit to your workplace if you have to food prep and take something somewhere. If you're going to eat something on a plane or in an enclosed car with a group of people, maybe, it's not the time for like extreme garlic or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do think that that's something that needs to be pointed out. And I had to learn that shit the hard way. I can't tell you how many times Kevin and Bean and Lisa and Ralph and all these people had to deal with my egg whites in a microwave before they were like, hey, dick. Our studio stinks. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna find some bone broth I can drink. Or so, you know what I'm saying? I started to think. All right. To button up this podcast, I wanted to just give you one fail-safe, amazing recipe that I go to all the time. My daughter calls it Papa's Special Stew. And so that you guys can call it that too. Because it's not even really for me. It's just Papa's. It can be Papa John for all I care. And it's super easy to make. And I make a shit ton of it. And always, it doesn't just serve as the lunch or dinner that I'm making it for. It serves as 2 or 3 meals for the entire family in days to come because it keeps very well. And it's maximum super high protein, super healthy as far as nutrient value. And again, it's easy as shit. Okay? Ground bison. I like bison, but some people don't. I don't find it very gamey. Some people do. So get yourself really lean ground beef. 10%, 7%. You just don't want to go too high in the fat because it probably tastes better. But you don't want to kind of kill. You don't want to defeat the purpose of making these choices. What do I mean by that is, if you're on a fully ketogenic diet, I understand. Okay, go with the higher fat. Opt for it. And I'm not an anti-fat guy. You guys know this. What I am saying is that, when you go with the carnivore, you go with the keto diet, and you're constantly eating bacon and ribeye, yeah, your carbs are down, but you're taking in 1,200 calories in a meal when you don't have to. Especially in something like a pasta sauce or a soup where the flavors are going to be enhanced by everything else in it. Go with the leaner meats. I like this ground bison, great range, premium bison. It's 10%. So, you're getting, for a 4-ounce serving, it's 11 grams fat and 23 grams protein. So there's 4 servings in this. This is a pound. So you get a pound of ground meat, lean as can be, and so this entire thing has 760 calories and close to, a little under 196 grams of protein. Box of bone broth. If you make your own bone broth, good for you. But it's a pain in the ass. I do not feel like it's the juice is worth that squeeze. I like Kettle and Fire, great company, and it tastes good. Chicken, go with chicken or turkey, even though I think red meat's healthier. When it comes to broths, you're talking about extruding the collagen and the micronutrients from the bones, and beef bones are so big that you oftentimes lose out. The smaller bones disintegrate much more, and they give out a lot more of the marrow and the healthier stuff, the connective tissue. So I get classic chicken, Kettle and Fire, one 16-ounce box. This has 90 calories and another 20 grams of protein. Mark's Primal Kitchen. Great old Mark Sisson. Makes a whole line of products I love. This marinara right here, tomato basil, made with avocado oil. There's no seed oils or any crap like that. It's really good. And there's like 2.5 cups in each jar. And the whole thing is like 450 calories, right? So you got 450 calories, 90 calories. Here we're again with why didn't I do this before? And 760 calories. Okay, not a whole lot when you take into consideration that you're making like 10 servings. You know. So you mix them all up. First, you brown the meat. Get a big old saucepan. Put a pat of butter or beef tallow, whatever you're cooking, oil or fat that you prefer. I like tallow or I like grass-fed butter. I'll put about a little pat of butter, like a nice little square, but the size of a Zippo, and then I'll put a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of beef tallow in a giant saucepan, okay? Made for soup. And when that liquefies, throw in the meat and then beat it up, with a spatula or a spoon, and let it until it browns. It's not fully cooked, but it's mostly brown, with little bits of red or pink showing through, okay? Usually takes about 2 or 3 minutes. At that point, dump in this fucker. Wait about 20, 30 minutes. Boom. You have a soup or a stew, as my daughter says, that will feed the entire family, and it's absolutely freaking delicious. Salt to taste. I will warn you that, remember, bone broth has a lot of natural sodium in it, so I still add sea salt, but be careful because you're already have something that the meat and everything is going to be absorbing a lot of that sodium to begin with. So just take it slowly and taste it. People love this. It tastes like it's not healthy. Then you can sprinkle Parmesan cheese on your kids or other people who aren't necessarily watching their diet as closely. Sprinkle some cheese or melt mozzarella on it. It is a family pleaser, and it makes a shit ton. And you can have a giant bowl of it for relatively low calories and a lot of protein and a lot of nutrients. Okay, add in zucchini, add in black olives. I've done both. Play with it, but that's a go-to. It takes you so little time and effort, and then when you're done, you're probably not going to eat the entire thing. Go ahead and put it in Tupperware. It keeps really well in fridge for a long time, and you can have it for lunch the next day. And then you've already kind of checked off a couple boxes there. You're having one meal in the moment, and then you have another meal for the next day that you could then heat up at work, and it won't offend anybody because it doesn't stink like poo. And that's just one kind of really easy. I wanted people to see that you don't have to get completely elaborate. I like to get geeky with cooking because I enjoy it. I enjoy the process, but that doesn't mean you have to. You can just have things that you can throw together last second that are that good, and that then can subsequently be packaged and eaten the next day. And really lean on ground meats. It's easy to just throw those in there. It's easy to measure because they're already ground. You can just take a hunk and measure, get your 6 ounces. You're like, boom, throw it in a pan when it's hot. Dice up the veggies, go with it, boom. And then if you still have some calories and stuff to play with, melt some cheese on it. And that's it, and that's like super good, solid, healthy go-to meal that takes you zero effort. Well, not zero, but you know what I'm saying. Make double, package some. Leftovers are your best friend. When you put in the effort to make a good, healthy meal, why on earth do you think it has to just be that one meal? Ain't nothing wrong with having ground meat, potatoes, and zucchini or asparagus, whatever, that you cooked the night before for breakfast. I do it. All right. Apples are great because not only are they incredibly healthy and incredibly useful, especially for the physique athlete, but they travel great. You can take them anywhere. And you don't need to heat them or anything. Pop it in your purse if you're a lady. Pop it in your briefcase, your bag, your whatever, your fanny pack if you're a real G. And you got a really good, solid nutritional tool on your hands. Greek yogurt is excellent. Some people don't do dairy. I get it. But I will say that even if you're pretty lactose intolerant, yogurt tends to be different because it is fermented. So people tend to tolerate it better. And Greek yogurt is better than others because it's higher protein. The way they process it, the way that they kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but the process they go through to make Greek style yogurt in comparison to regular yogurt, it brings out lower sugars and higher protein, and it is really a great, effective nutritional buddy of yours because it's easy to just plop it in there. I'll throw collagen protein powder. If you find a healthy, delicious one, get collagen protein powder. Chocolatey. Pop it in Greek yogurt. Boom, 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 boom. Tons of protein. Very healthy. Dairy calcium has been shown to be great for people who are looking to lose body fat. It's filling, and it tastes like some type of puddingy, cheesecakey dessert. All right. I love you, all of you. In this crazy mixed up world that makes you think that nobody cares, remember one thing. I do. Be good.